Hi, this is Tim Garman for SIT on NZDP101 and just looking at assignment B, and this is for you, Moto. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Just responding to your email, and what I've got here is the, as you can see, the beach background, and I've imported the minifig image, so I've brought the whole of the image in with its background. So I haven't destroyed that image at all other than having resized it. So it's all still there. You can see it's there on its own layer as I brought it in, and you can see that we've got the curves layer, which is the shadow. If I just turn the minifig off, you can see the shadow there, and the background is on the bottom layer. And just for your information, we can drag these layers around and change the order of them if we need to. So you had a question about masks. I just want to show you this. So I've got my quick selection tool selected here. I've got the minifig layer selected, which in fact, let's name it because it's a good habit to get into. Select it with the quick selection tool. I'm just going to do a very quick selection. I haven't edited that image in any way at the moment. I just want to do it very quickly to demonstrate to you. So that's a quick selection around that minifig. If I come down to the bottom of the layer palette, we have the mask or add layer mask button. Click the icon and the background disappears straight away. So that's the correct way to edit that non-destructively, because if we look at the thumbnails in the layer palette, we can see just about that the background is still there. It's just being hidden by the mask. So we haven't destroyed it, we've just hidden it. Okay, let's continue with this. And you had a question about the wet sand and how that should be cloned on a separate layer. So let me demonstrate that for you. We've got the wet sand here in the corner. We want to clone that out. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a new layer. So top of the layer palette, into the menu, and we've got new layer. And we can, let's call that wet sand. So there's our empty layer. Now we could, let's move it down. Let's move it down to just above the background. So then we're going to use the clone stamp tool. Now we're going to work on this layer, but at the moment there's nothing on that layer. If I turn that off, you'll see that there's nothing there. So when we clone, we've got to come up to the option strip. You'll know that with every different tool, the information in the option strip, which is up here, changes. So we've got a sample menu here, and it may well be set to current layer. Now, there's nothing on the current layer, so if I start cloning or sampling and cloning, nothing's going to happen because there's nothing on that layer. So we need to change that. We need to change it to current and below. That means it's going to sample anything that's on this layer. Well, there's nothing on that layer, but it's also going to sample from the layer underneath. Now we did move our layer from the top. Now if it was at the top, we probably want to set this to all layers. But current and below is correct for the moment. So the other thing I'm going to do, I'm going to blow this up so I can see in a bit more detail. So you're on a PC, so it will be Control plus, and then the space bar will move things around. So we're looking at that in a bit more detail. We've got the clone stamp tool selected. We've got current and below in the sample menu, and I need to change the size of my brush. So I want the hardness to 0, so it's a soft edge. Maybe that's a bit too small. Something like that feels about right. Then you'll need to hold down the Alt key on your PC. I'm giving you the PC keyboard shortcuts. Hold down the Alt key, and this is how we sample. So if I want to sample a bit of sand here. I've got the Alt key pressed down and I click to sample, and I can release the Alt key and I can start to paint over that wet sand. Now the point here is that I haven't changed the background layer. All that cloning you see is on that separate layer. So that's non-destructive because it's not destroying or affecting the original image at all. It's doing all the work on a separate layer. So just remember, create a new layer and just check if you're using the clone stamp tool, just check what you've got in terms of sampling in that drop down menu at the top in the option strip. Now you had a question about the shadow, and I've just checked my feedback, and you've got the shadow direction correct, but I've got, as you can see, I've got your image here. But really, because we've got this left-hand edge of the minifig in shadow, that means the shadow should start at the front edge of his foot. So let me show, I've just put a shadow in, let me turn yours off, and I've got this one that I've created. So I would expect the shadow to look more like that. It looks to me like the grass the shadow is falling to the left, so the sun is going to be up to the right somewhere up here, and it's pushing that shadow out to the left and coming from the edge of that, or the corner of that front point on his foot. So that's really what I was looking for. If I go back to yours, I think yours is going in the wrong direction and really is not taking into account that that part of the sand in front of the figure should just be in shadow as well. So that was really what I was meaning, and it's actually probably easier to show you on this video. Right, let's come back to this original image, and you had a question about the reflections in the legs, and I'll just read out what you've said. You say, I have no idea what you mean by with all layers selected in the option strip from the sample drop down menu. And you comment about having the book Adobe CS4. That's quite an old version, but we'll have a look at this and I'll show you exactly what I mean. And it also applies to the wet sand, which I've also already explained. But what we'll do is, the first thing is to create a new layer. I'm going to call it, let's call it legs. I'm going to leave it at the top of the layers palette for now. The next thing I'm going to do is zoom in because I need to look at that area in a bit more detail. So on your PC it will be, I think it's Control Plus for you, will zoom in, and the spacebar helps you navigate. So I've gone in quite close, and what I want to do is remove that reflection because that reflection is from a different location. So it's not going to match this new location that we've put the minifig in. So the next thing I want to do is just create a little selection around that area. And so I'm going to go down to the minifig layer and just make sure that it's the thumbnail selected, not the mask. So select the thumbnail. I'm going to go to my quick selection tool, and it's not a great selection, but it will probably do what we need it to do. In fact, I can edit that a bit more just by holding the, for you it's the Alt key down. We can take a bit off that because that is probably going to work slightly better for us. So that's just holding the Alt key down while you've got the quick selection tool. So we've got that area selected. Now let's go back up to our legs layer, and we need to look at what's in the option strip. So because we're going to go to the clone tool, clone stamp tool. So we select that, and in the option strip we've got all layers selected. Now that will actually be better than current and below, because we've now got a whole load of layers below the legs layer. So with that selected in the options strip, and with the clone stamp tool selected, we can now sample an area. So to sample, I'm going to hold down what for you will be the Alt key, and I'm going to sample that red area, making sure you notice the brush is not very large, and then I can start to just paint that reflection. And you see I've got a bit of edge coming in there, which I don't really want. So but the good thing with the selection is I can go right up to it, because you can only paint inside that selection. So it's kind of acting as a mask in a way. So it's a good thing to keep sampling. Oops, that's not a great job though, so let's undo that. And as you see, we're just picking up things we don't want, so we can touch those out. So using this red area, again, we can start to edit these reflections. So I'm not going to do all of that, but you can get an idea of what's going on there. And the point here is then, again, we're not changing. Let's just deselect our selection. Let's go back to full size, and you can see we haven't changed the minifig in any way. If I turn that layer on and turn everything else off, you see all that editing is on that layer, and that's what we mean by non-destructive.